Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report. And we're going to be looking at some Raiders trade candidates this offseason. Free agency is about a month away, and this team is going to be very aggressive in free agency. With that being said, you could see a lot of moves by Pete Carroll, by John Spytek, that could impact this team's ability to build in the future. I know that a lot of times when I talk about trades, people don't like when I do it because, we don't want to look at moving on from certain players. But this is a type of show that is a business decision type of show. I will say this, and this is important. Trades, they cannot happen until the new league year begins. So that's March 12th at 4 p.m. Eastern time. You might see a few rumors. You might see a few things that end up happening. But again, the deals cannot be officially official until March 12th, 4 p.m. Eastern time. If the Raiders make a trade, if any time there is a big-time move for this team or organization, I will go live and I will make a video for it. Quite frankly, trade lives are some of the best we've ever done. RIP a little bit to the Devontae Adams trade show we did. We went live for 9 hours. I'm telling you, if once the Raiders make a trade, we usually go pretty wild here on this show. So the way that this is going to work is this. I have these players ranked from 10 all the way down to 1. I wanted to do it a little bit different because there are a lot of players that we could at least look at and say, yeah, that makes sense why the Raiders could trade him. Yeah, that makes sense why the Raiders could trade that guy. So the way that I'm going to do this is it's based on least likely, going all the way down to most likely. So the player you're going to see at 10, I'm going to be honest, I don't think is going to get traded. But the player at 1 would be the one that I would say is the most likely to get dealt. You know what? Let's start this thing off with a freaking bang, man. I'm going to go number 10 here. It's Maxx Crosby. I do not think that Crosby is going to be traded, but one of the things that you got to consider when you talk about Raiders trade candidates are who are the players that actual other NFL teams would actually want to make a deal for. Because I'll be real, 5 to 6 of the players that are on this video, I don't even know if a team would want to make a deal for them. But the number one player that every single team in the NFL, no questions asked, if he was made available, would say yes, it would be Crosby. Here's the problem for other NFL teams. The Raiders brought back Patrick Graham, Rob Leonard, and Max seems to say that this is the most optimistic that he's been about a Raiders team since he's joined the Silver and Black. If the Silver and Black don't give him a brand new contract, he is going to move up drastically on this list. But because I'm confident that the deal's going to get done, he's just simply number 10. Let's go to number 9 here, and it's Jakobi Meyers. And this is another player that teams would be interested in. For that reason, he makes the list. He also has $0 million guaranteed on his contract, and he is in the final year of his deal. So if he's looking for money and he doesn't get it, that could be an option. If the Raiders, let's say, are looking to trade up to get to the number 1 overall pick and you don't want to give up draft capital, Jakobi Meyers could be a player that teams would say, you know what, I can at least build around that guy. And the fact that he is one of the dudes that teams would actually be interested in, you got to consider it. If the Raiders do move on from him, you save $6.7 million. You're going to end up eating $8.3. The final line that you're going to see here on every single one of these players that I talk about today illustrates how much money the Raiders would save and ultimately how much money Mark Davis would have to eat. Let's go to number 8 here on the list. It's Kolton Miller. If you haven't already been able to tell, these are the top 3 players that I would say NFL teams would be interested in. The reason why I have Miller ranked as a more likely candidate than Jakobi is because he also has $0 million guaranteed on the final 2 years of his contract. On top of that, teams are always looking for a reliable left tackle. And it's no excuse, right? We know that quarterbacks are a big reason why teams win. But when you watch that Super Bowl the other day, and there's been a lot of crazy shenanigans going on with the Eagles Super Bowl parade. But in order to protect your quarterback, there's going to be teams, I think, this offseason investing in edges, investing in defensive line more than we've ever seen before. If the Raiders trade Miller, you save $12.3 million. It's not a move that I think that the Raiders want to make. But if a team came calling and the Raiders knew they weren't going to pay him, and if it helped you get the number 1 overall pick, then you would do it. Quite frankly, I think the only way the Raiders even consider trading Maxx Crosby, Jakobi Meyers, or Kolton Miller is to get the number 1 pick. So let's talk about this here. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's show. Are you trading Maxx Crosby, Jakobi, or Kolton Miller to get the number 1 overall pick? Trade or pass? My answer coming up here in just a moment. I am not trading Maxx Crosby. I am not trading Kolton Miller. I am not trading Jakobi Meyers to get to the number 1 pick because, in my opinion, if the silver and black move up to number 1, it's to go get a quarterback. And I want to be able to prove to that quarterback that we have stability with Maxx Crosby, that we actually have a legit wide receiver for him and Jakobi Meyers, and we also have a legit left tackle, offensive tackle for Kolton Miller. So even though I think the Raiders might want to trade up, I don't think that they're actually going to do it. But if they did want to move up, you don't have to give up one of those 3 players because, quite frankly, I think this is the lowest value that the number 1 pick has ever had in the NFL draft. Let's go to number 7 here on the list. I'm going to go with Dylan Parham at the offensive line. This is another player that I'm really hoping the Raiders do not move on from, but he is in the final year of his contract. This is going to be his 3rd regime since being drafted in 2022. And when you find offensive linemen that have the versatility that Dylan Parham does, a lot of teams view that as a very valuable player. This is a dude that can play left guard. He can play center. He can play right guard. He's even played a little bit of right tackle. You go back to his days at college football. For trading-wise, you're going to save about $3.6 million if you were to move on from him. But to me, this is somebody that I would like to be able to keep on my O-line. And the bigger problem is if you move on from Parham, you better have a replacement plan because there's going to be a few other players on this O-line that we're going to be talking about here. Maybe you could kick DJ Glaze in. I know the Raiders want to bring back Jordan Meredith on top of that. But this is simply a dude that I don't really want to trade, but will have value on the NFL trade market. Let's go to number 6 here, and this is realistically where I would say this list starts to become more realistic of players that the Raiders could actually want to move on from. Jack Jones is a cornerback, and if you move on from him, you save $3.3 million. I'll be real. I don't really know if a team would want to trade for Jack Jones at 3.3. I think that he's a little bit more likely to get cut, and I talk about that in my Raiders cut candidates video that I put out. If you do want to make a move for him, he's played 42 games, and I think he's going to be a bad fit with this new regime. And I'm also just going off of a few things that I've heard from some other people that I trust that don't know if Jack Jones is going to be a great locker room fit with Antonio Pierce not being at the helm. I think Jack's going to get another opportunity elsewhere, but $3.3 million for maybe your 4th or 5th cornerback on your team, y'all can make that decision. $3.3 million, if it was up to me, I would rather invest that money and going out and finding somebody else that we can bring in to help get this ship going. If you guys don't know, my birthday is February 20th, and we're going to be doing a special live show for that day. My dad's going to be in town. So we're going to do, our normal 3-segment live like we would do on a Tuesday live show. Remember a few weeks ago we did that special Venthrak happy hour? That's basically what this is going to be. It's going to be 90 minutes of just straight on Raiders content. And the last hour, make sure you bring your drinking pants. Make sure you get ready because we're going to go live a little bit earlier, 3 p.m. Eastern time, to just give ourselves a little extra time in case Richie, my dad, is trying to get a little bit wet and wild with the nation. And I'm already telling you this. He's really excited. So please make sure you guys pull up, hit that subscribe button. Let's go to number 5 here on the list. It's Thayer Munford on the offensive line. Offensive linemen always have value in the league. And maybe you're only going to get a 7th-round pick in the 2026 NFL draft. But you know what? It's something that you got to consider. If I could save that $1.1 million and use that money to try to maybe bring back an Adam Butler, maybe you try to bring in another older veteran, if you will. Hell, if I could save that 1.1 and use that money to bring back Jordan Meredith, I think Jordan Meredith has more value right now than Munford, who had a really bad year last season. He's also in the final year of his deal. So knowing that there's multiple players like a Dylan Parham, like a Thayer Munford, if you don't think that you're going to bring them back following this following year, then this is where you have to start thinking, do we trade him now or do we wait to trade him at the NFL trade deadline in November? For the Raiders, for Thayer Munford, I could see Munford being a part of a deal that helps the Raiders move up if they did want to move up in the draft. Let's go to number 4 here, and this one kind of pains me a little bit because I've been sitting around waiting for the Raiders to run 12 personnel with Michael Mayer, and there's a part of me that's like, maybe Tom Brady can get the 2 tight end system working like he had back with Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez, because that's what I wanted to see from Brock Bowers and Mayer. If Mayer, though, is looking to be a tight end 1, And that's why he's ranked so high on this list. It's not that I want to trade Mayer. That's the complete opposite of what I'm saying. But Mayer was a tight end back in 2023 that a lot of people thought could go in round 1. No disrespect to Mayer. Brock Bowers is the tight end 1 for the Raiders, hopefully for his entire career. And knowing that, and also the fact that Mayer stepped away from football last season, I know that we don't really know what happened. It was a strange situation. Let's keep it a buck. You're not going to save a lot of money. This is one of those moves, though. If Mayer wants to go somewhere else to get an opportunity in his young career, and he's already getting ready to tackle his 3rd new NFL regime, sometimes that can lead to a player ultimately getting moved on from. I would say you're probably only going to get a 5th, maybe 6th round pick at this point for Michael Mayer. But if you're like me, I want to see some 12 personnel. I know Chip Kelly's known for spreading them out, giggity, but he's also known for being able to keep it in and being able to pound the running game. I want to see the Raiders have a versatile offense, and I believe Mayer is a good tight end. I believe Brock Bowers, Mayer could be a great 2 tight end set that we could go and we could dominate, help our quarterback out, be a safety blanket. Let's figure it out to make it happen. If you want to see more 12 personnel with Mayer and Brock Bowers, spam 12 down below. Let's go to number 3 here on the list. It is Gardner Minshew. Let's get one thing straight. The player that the Raiders will try to trade the hardest this offseason is Gardner Minshew. The reason why he's not number 1 on this list is because I don't know if an NFL team is going to trade for him and take on $11.8 million for his new contract. Because here's the thing, I wouldn't take on $11.8 million for Gardner Minshew. That I can promise you. So knowing that I wouldn't do it, I don't think that another NFL team's going to do it. And with that being said, I do still just see the Raiders designating Minshew as a post-June 1st cut candidate. If there is a team that's willing to take on that deal, 7th round pick for Gardner Minshew allows us to save $9.5 million. If nobody's willing to offer a 7th, which, I'll be real, I would say the top team most likely to trade for Minshew would be the Indianapolis Colts just because of his old connections there, and he was a Pro Bowler just in 2023. But Gardner Minshew, man, I just don't see that one happening. Let's go to number 2 here. I would say Aidan O'Connell has a better chance of getting traded than Gardner Minshew simply because AOC has real value on the market if he were to hit the trade block. The fact that this young man has played in 20 games, started in 17, and it's only going to cost the team $1.2 million to bring him in, that's going to have some value. On top of that, I have said it 100 times already this offseason, the Raiders are going to sign or bring in a quarterback during free agency, and they're going to do it early on. Knowing that that's going to happen, and knowing that they want to draft a quarterback, that makes Aidan the number 3. There is a scenario where the Raiders could sign a QB, keep Aidan as the number 2 just because they don't want to throw the rookie out into the fire in case another quarterback got hurt, and then you keep Aidan as the QB2. If that's the Raiders' plan, I'm okay with it. Based on some of the conversations I've heard, though, there are people inside of the Raiders building that want whoever the quarterback that they bring in know that he is the starting quarterback of the Las Vegas Raiders, and they're not dumb. They know the nation loves Aidan. The nation has always got AOC's back. You're not going to get a lot of money for him. So I think that this could be one of those situations where a team like the Patriots is going to have some interest in him. If New England throws out a 6th-round pick for Aidan O'Connell, the Raiders are going to do it to show stability inside the locker room, because the last thing that this team's going to want is broken up stability in the locker room over a backup quarterback like AOC. But let's not get it twisted. Aidan does have value. Before I reveal who the number 1 player most likely to be traded this offseason by the Raiders is, I want you to let me know who you think it is. And it can be anybody. It can be somebody on offense. It can be somebody on defense. You know, I actually wondered how many people were going to throw out a name like Daniel Carlson on special teams because he also has $0 million guaranteed. It's not going to be Daniel Carlson. The player that I believe is the most likely to be dealt this offseason is Andre James. And I'll tell you what, Andre James, I owe this guy a beer, 2. Maybe I owe him 3 beers. Because I feel like every offseason I sit up here and I go, the Raiders are going to move on from James this offseason, right? And they just keep on keeping him around. To me, though, I don't want to play James as a guard. I don't think he's physical enough to be a guard in a Chip Kelly system. I don't think he's physical enough to be a guard in the NFL. And JPJ is just a better center. So if you're telling me JPJ at center, what does that mean for Andre James? To me, that just means let's move on from him. He struggled a lot last season. However, though, he did get better and better and better from 2019 to 2023. You got to give him his flowers there. I have already been told by a source that the Giants could be a team to keep in mind for Andre James to go back and rejoin Carmen Brasillo. And a trade does save the Raiders $5.3. Mark's going to end up eating $3.4 million. But for an offensive lineman that had one bad year, that's also played some tackle again back in college, it ain't going to happen now. The only way that I would even consider maybe the Raiders hang on to Andre and let him play guard is because he played football at UCLA. That very first year was with Chip Kelly. And if one of their plans is to get Chip Kelly to be that next head coach in 2 to 3 years, maybe Kelly has a good enough relationship with Andre James where they want to keep somebody that's already worked with Chip in that locker room. But that's really the only other reason why I could say that they would keep him. You can get value from Andre, and it's probably only going to be a 6th-round pick, maybe only a 7th-round pick because of that contract in the year that he had. But if I'm the Raiders, I'm moving forward with JPJ as my center. And unfortunately, that means I'm going to try to trade away Andre James. So here one more time are the top 10 players that I would say are the most likely to be traded this offseason by the Las Vegas Raiders. And number 10, number 9, number 8, and number 7 are players that I simply do not want to move on from. Number 4, and Michael Mayer is another player that I do not want to move on from, but they have to be on this list simply because if Crosby, Mayer, Crosby, Jakobi Meyers, Kolton Miller, if they don't get new contracts, it's a possibility. If Michael Mayer wants to be a number 1 tight end, it's a possibility. For the 2 quarterbacks down there, it's a possibility. There's tons of names that you could throw out. Hopefully you enjoyed today's show. And reminder, if the Raiders end up making a trade, we will be live here on the Raiders Report.